But he was saying last Saturday in Washington that he thinks that the federal government, there was a conspiracy to actually blow up those levees so that they would flood the poor black districts in New Orleans. I have to tell you, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe it. But when you see some of the things that have gone on in this country...
Exactly. It's not far-fetched. And also, I like to say, it's not necessarily blow it up, but the residents of that ward, they believe that there was a Hurricane Betsy in '65. They felt the same thing happened, where the choice had to be made. One neighborhood, we got to save one neighborhood and flood another hood, flood another neighborhood. Look, if we're in L.A.
So that's been done before.
If we're in L.A. and there's an emergency situation, we call from Beverly Hills, we call from Compton. Which one are the cops coming to first?
Right. But that's different than proactively blowing up a levee to flood one neighborhood. I'm not saying it's not possible.
But that would require a conspiracy. I mean, look, we can all understand. Anybody with any knowledge of history can understand why a lot of people feel this way, that that's a reasonable theory. But it would also require a conspiracy at 3 levels of government, that would the local, the state, and the federal. It would require no white
presidents have been assassinated. So why is that so far-fetched?
Because it would require no white person in the government to have a moral compass. It would require no black person to have a spine. And I think that that's a very hard case to make.
Let me ask a question. Do you think that election in 2000 was fair? You don't think that was rigged?
It's not a question of being fair.
You don't think that was rigged? If they could rig an election, they could do anything.
But you know how it was rigged.
I'll tell you, the only thing I can say about that is I live in St. Bernard Parish, and I was born and raised right there. I fished off them levees, and them levees held up during many hurricanes that came through. And back in '65, it was a proven fact that the levees were blown up. And I feel my opinion about the levee is a little bit different than some other opinions, because I was actually on my roof when the levees broke, and I just, have concern that it might have not been a weak levee. I rode my bike on that levee as a child. To me, the levee was like a Great Wall to China. I was inside the levee protection system. I felt safe. We bared the storm, and then next thing you know, the levees was breached. And you know what? Sometimes the levees will breach to protect other cities.
New Orleans evacuee Clara Bartholomew, quote, "The 17th Street levee was bombed by the Army Corps of Engineers to save the more valuable real estate in the city. To keep the French Quarter protected, the 9th Ward was sacrificed. People are afraid to speak out. Everyone who was near there heard the bombings. They bombed 7 times, and that's why they didn't fix the levees. 20 feet of water, gators, people dying in water. They let the parishes go, not the city center. The tourist trap was saved over human life." Mark Schleifstein wrote on November 19, 2007, an article called "Critic, Corpse Tried to Thwart Inquiry," in which he says, quote, "The leader of an independent team of researchers investigating the New Orleans levee failures has filed an ethics complaint with the American Society of Civil Engineers, claiming that executives of that trade organization and the Army Corps of Engineers have systemically attempted to undermine his group's investigation. University of California, Berkeley civil engineering professor Raymond Seed led a group whose conclusions at times contrasted sharply with those of the Corps-sponsored investigations. In his 42-page letter sent on October 30th to the former president of the American Society of Civil Engineers, Seed charged that the Corps-sponsored probe produced flawed results that absolved the Corps of its full measure of blame, and more importantly, it led to mistakes in the rebuilding of levees and walls in that area. Seed, echoing other critics, blasted the cozy relationship between the Corps and the ASCE officials in attempting to control the results of the Katrina investigations. He called the Corps' role in financing the ASCE investigation a conflict of interest. The Army Corps of Engineers was tasked to investigate itself. He further alleges a series of attempts by the Corps and the ASCE to block independent teams from gathering key evidence from the sites of the levee failures, and from speaking publicly about their findings, which often have differed substantially from those of the Corps-sponsored Interagency Performance Evaluation Task Force investigators. The relationship between the ASCE and the Corps, which controls a large portion of civil works construction projects in the country, has always been close, and Seed alleges the Corps has used that leverage to squash differing viewpoints about the levee's failure. Seed also charged that the ASCE officials attempted to keep its own team members from testifying about their initial findings before Congress, and attempted to block similar efforts by Seed's team and those of Team Louisiana, another independent group, to release to Congress and the public some of the early theories on how the levees failed. The Corps had originally promised to grant the independent team access to such essential evidence, but when that didn't happen, Seed's team decided to do its own sampling, but even then the Corps attempted to block his team from bringing a drilling rig used to collect the samples into the site of the 17th Street Canal Wall failure. The Corps finally relented, but only after Team Louisiana, also seeking the samples, recruited Louisiana Attorney General Charles Foti, who threatened to arrest anyone interfering with the sample collection.
All right, I'm here with two New Orleans residents who lived in the 9th Ward at the time of Hurricane Katrina. Would you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Name's David Gonzalez.
I'm Dixie Gonzalez.
Okay, David and Dixie Gonzalez. Where did you reside on August 29, 2005?
816 Gordon Street, Lower 9.
So you were in the Lower 9?
Yes.
Tell us basically, Hurricane Katrina came on the 29th, and you guys stayed through Katrina, correct?
Yes.
How many stayed? Was it you, your husband, and...
The neighbor next door.
And you have any pets?
Yeah, we did. We had 1 dog, 4 cats.
So tell us, from your view, what did you basically experience as Katrina came through?
Well, the 29th, the wind blew hard. It was sheets and sheets of rain, and a tree blew down. Oh, we couldn't get off the porch. We were stranded. So about the first night we were there, I'm hearing all these things go off on the levee, and I looked at the levee. I said, what are they doing, shooting off firecrackers? He said, no, blowing up the levee.
So you actually heard the explosion?
Heard and saw.
Oh, yeah,
And you saw it?
I saw it.
Yeah.
What did you see?
We couldn't see really that close, but we could see close enough. We seen the helicopters come over the levee, and I think they were dropping package charges and dropping them on the levee and let them blow up there. But they might have sent some guys down from the helicopter down there to work on it to blow it up right there.
Okay, so you heard the explosion, you saw the helicopters.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that people need to realize is the city of New Orleans is basically like a fishbowl.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so as Katrina came through, the 17th Street Canal broke. Well, we know that breached. The water began to rise in the city. So as that bowl filled up, they had to relieve it, and that's how they did it, by blowing the levee, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I'm pretty sure they did.
So the levee blew and the water began to recede. What did you guys do at that point?
Well, we still there. We spent another night there, 2 nights in a row. And by the time that next morning come, it might have went down a little bit, but it wasn't that much yet. And that's when the boats that were picking up people picked us up, and they took us to the St. Claude Bridge.
Yeah.
From there, we walked over to St. Claude Bridge, and we caught a army. Yeah, what was it? Army truck.
Army truck.
Army truck, and
The
it took us to the Superdome.